Hi, everybody. I was playing with the transition
Why
just
didn't you
then
just hit the transition and let it?
because I wanted to be cool.
Oh, okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm Devin Noel Lee with Family History Fanatics, and this is my husband, Andy. He is not very social in the chat, but I'm so glad that everybody
I
is.
said like 3 things.
I know. I'm easy in there chatting up a storm. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We are going to be talking about quite a few things today. We are actually going to go back to the basics because there's a lot of people who have sent me emails and Facebook messages, questions on what do I put in the tree? My relationship has this. How do I mark that? And we're going to tackle that today. But first, we want to say hello to everyone who is joining us live. I don't know what you're doing. Oh. We swapped places today because I'm going to be driving the presentation and he's going to be handling the chat. But we're super glad that everybody is here today. If you are a channel member, I want you to go to the chat area and you're going to see a smiley face and you're going to see a $sign thing. If you click on this smiley face, that's going to open up some special emojis that you can use during the live stream. We've added a triangle.
Just a second. I got to open it up.
Okay. So he's going to try to do it while I'm talking. So we've added a triangle with an exclamation point in it, and that is whenever we say it depends, and click it depends. We are going to have some things where you're going to be able to weigh in on a question. There's a yes button. There's a red circle with a white X. That's kind of your no. Or if we ever say something that's wrong, you can put that and say wrong and make fun of us. It's all great. And then, so Andy often says one more thing.
I say one more thing? I thought you
No,
say
excuse
one more
me.
thing.
I meant to say, Andy says it depends a lot. And I say, oh, and one more thing. And one more thing. Or that's my favorite. Or this is great because, but this is great because. And that's why there's that +1 button, because it's me always saying one more thing, or this is the best or the greatest, and everything's the greatest. There's also a spreadsheet. I don't think it turned out as well as I had hoped, but there's a spreadsheet. June requested a spyglass or a magnifying glass, so we have that in there.
Patricia, that's the spreadsheet. That's not the whiteboard. The whiteboard has the whiteboard with the
blue marker. That's the whiteboard, because Greg has been asking for that forever and always. And then there's this red mess. That's your brick wall. I thought it was going to turn out better, but hey, you try and you know, experiment. So welcome.
What's the magnifying glass and the spyglass for?
That's for research questions, or whenever we talk about stalking people. We talk about living people.
So use the spyglass when we're stalking people, and use the magnifying glass when you have a question.
Something like that. Or when you're just researching, talking about research resources. You guys play around, have fun with the emojis. That's all part of being a channel member. That makes it really fun here on the live stream. Now, the last thing before we get started, I want you to throw in your questions that you have on what do I do to record fact, date, place, person, relationship in the family tree. Before you do that, make sure you put the letter Q in front of it, because it makes those questions pop out, and Andy will queue up those questions. Now, I'm going to go through a little bit of training first, and then we're going to work in the questions along the way. How's that sound? You ready?
Sounds good.
All right, so I can see you guys are tackling the emojis like crazy. I'm really glad about that. I'm going to turn that thing off so it stops distracting me, and we'll go over here. The purpose of today's training is to talk about family trees, building, and recording people and relationships in the family tree. Now, I get these questions all of the time, and I love the questions because I know that you are thinking. And thinking is always better in family history than just haphazardly putting things together. So the first thing we're going to talk about is naming standards. When you put somebody in the tree, you are going to be putting their name, right? Hopefully.
I hope.
I hope. but something about them. So we're going to talk a little bit about some naming standards. Some of them are over in the Board for Certified Genealogists, their standards, and some of them are just common practices that we have seen in talking with web developers that use online trees and just our experience in 30 years of doing genealogy. So let's talk about some of those standards. If you agree, you can go, and you are a channel member, you can put the yes button. If you think I'm wrong, you can use the X button. And then if there's ever a time we say, well, it depends, you can go ahead and use that depends. Now, if you aren't a channel member, then you're going to have to type out the words. But let's have some fun. So let's first tackle some don'ts with putting somebody's name in a family tree. The first one, and we put a video about this, is don't use UNK for unknown. I know a lot of people, when we released a video about don't call your grandma Unc, they didn't like that too much. But that is kind of a holdover from paper days when we were trying to tell people that we didn't know that the name didn't exist. But now that we have computer databases and now that we have online trees, there really is no need for the word Unc. Would you agree?
Yep.
Yep.
I would agree.
You would agree. He's just going to man that over there. You are going to chime in when you have some thoughts, yes?
Hopefully.
Hopefully. All right. Now, the next don't is don't put descriptors into the name field. Now, again, this is kind of a holdover from the paper genealogy days when you were trying to articulate that there was a child, maybe a baby girl that was born. You didn't know what their name was. They died in infancy. Well, again, you don't need to put that on your tree. Just leave it blank, and then you can use their surname. The next thing you don't want to do is you don't want to put extra punctuation into the name field, particularly if you are using an online database search engine. And extra punctuations are punctuations that are not part of a name. So if you have the name O'Toole and you have an apostrophe after the O, well, that's actually part of the name, and you can put that into a surname field. If you have an accented first name, I grew up knowing someone named Dewana, D apostrophe Wana. Well, that's part of her name, so you need to put that apostrophe into her name. But this is when you don't put quotation marks to offset a nickname. You don't put parentheses of any kind. If that's not really part of somebody's name, you need to leave it out.
So we got an update here.
I have an update.
Well, yes, because I think it was Stacy brought up a good point. Or who? Now there's lots of things that have gone by. Oh, yeah, Stacy did bring up a good point about Unc.
Yes.
If that really is their name, you can put Unc.
Yes.
And so I thought to myself, I wonder how many Uncs there are.
Okay.
Well, if I went to Family Search and I searched through all of their records just for the last name of Unc.
But not their tree. Their
not
records.
their tree, just records. Unc, U-N-K. It comes up with 25,497 results.
There you go. So if the last name really is Unc, you can go ahead and put
There's
Unc.
only 25,000 times you should be putting Unc in your family tree.
Well, not necessarily, because some of those records talk about the same people, so that would actually decrease. So only use the last name Unc if their last name really is Unc. And now you see why there's the confusion if you put Unc as unknown.
So, just for those of you who want to know even a little bit more, most Uncs are in Minnesota, it looks like.
Okay.
And Illinois. And then California, but California's got lots of people. And then Michigan. So, there's this lot of Uncs that moved up to the what do you call that?
Upper Midwest.
Upper Midwest. Michigan, Netherlands.
Okay.
And then we get into much fewer. So, if you are not from Minnesota, Illinois, and Michigan, or the Netherlands, you probably should not be putting Unc in your tree. That's all.
I love it. Hey, this is why we do a live show, because, I love it. Thank you so much. All right. So, punctuation. We did cover that if a surname or a first name actually has an apostrophe in it, you can include it, but we're trying to avoid putting quotation marks or parentheses or any kind of extra characters that don't belong. If a name like the name Peña, P-E-N-A with a tilde over the N for a Spanish name Peña, yeah, absolutely. Go ahead and use those how do you say that word?
Diacritics.
There you go. Marks.
Diacritic.
All right.
It dia something or other.
Greg knows. Some of you know. Anyway, so those accent marks, because French names also have those accent marks too. So you can go ahead and include those if they are part of the actual name. Now, the next thing, we have this website that we used to read a number of years ago called Barking Up the Wrong Tree. And they would show these family trees where people would put 1GGRSC 2G something something. And then it's a code that only makes sense to that tree. And maybe you can figure it out. Don't stick those in the surname anymore. Now, the reason is, let me go over and show you over on Family Search. You can, on Family Search, on Ancestry, in a lot of places, even software program, you can go ahead and click Relationship to Me, and you're going to find how you're related to the people on the tree. So you don't need to put those marks in there anymore. That's, again, a holder from paper. Just eliminate it from your tree. So boo hiss. How many people are okay with that? Those so far. I need to grab a quick drink of water.
Well, everybody seems like they're okay with those. I mean, except for the unks, because some people are named Unk.
Okay.
I would like to know if any of our viewers have an Unk, not a fake Unk, a real Unk in your genealogy. So if you have a Unk in your genealogy, then, put it in the comments below of who your Unk is.
I'm going to do a search real quick.
And on that same, June brought up also, don't use she says NMK.
Yes, name unknown.
Name unknown for middle name in the name box.
You know what? I think people need to go and start doing some Unk research because I don't see anybody connected to the family tree with these records.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if anybody's got some extra spare time and you want to start putting these Unk families together, I might do that, actually. You know what? This is like a 4-day weekend for me. I think I'm going to put together some Unks.
Okay.
And get a family tree of the Unks.
Okay.
So that they don't feel left out.
Right. Susie Unk, we're coming after you.
Yeah, Susie Unk and Thomas Unk and June Unk and Elizabeth Unk.
Oh, but he was born in Georgia.
Well, there's some elsewhere. I'm just saying.
All right. Now, truth admission time. How many of you have done any of those things before? It's okay if you have. If you're a newbie genealogist, yay, don't make those mistakes. But I know I've put the punctuation marks before on my paper trees, and then I converted it over.
Diacritics.
See, I knew Greg would know.
No, it was Patricia that started.
She beat him?
She said diacritical. Diacritical. Yeah, that's all the same. We're going to give the win to Patricia. You get the 10 points for knowing what that is first.
All right. Awesome.
You can redeem those points at the end of the presentation.
All right. So let's talk about some Jews. So I know this is also controversial, but if you don't know somebody's name and if you don't know somebody's fact, leave it blank. So if you know that you have two brothers and their father was most likely last name Garnett, then stick in Garnett, but don't put father or something. Go ahead and leave their father's name blank. It really is okay. And then the next part, so this has kind of evolved for me over time because I was taught one way, and then I learned that there's more people in the world, and you have different practices. So I think it's important that we make room for cultural naming practices.
Hey, yeah, okay.
Yeah?
I was going to, but we haven't even got to that. Never mind. I pretend like I didn't interrupt you here.
Okay, he didn't interrupt me. So one of the practices in many cultures is that the woman takes on their spouse's surname, and then they became known as that. So when I married Andy, I was happy to lay aside my maiden name, Geisler, because nobody can spell it and nobody can pronounce it when they read it, to become Lee. But on my tree, my last name should be my maiden name. And so that's one of the cultural practices for, I'm saying chicks in America. That doesn't sound right. Oh my goodness. But here's another thing that threw me off at the beginning, and if you're a baby genealogist, it could also throw you off. There are some cultures that have patronymics. Now, patronymics is when a father passes on the, how do you explain it? So the way I think of it is more of an example rather than a definition. So you'll have Anders, that's a man, and he has children. He has a son and a daughter. And so the son's last name becomes Anders' son of Ander. And the daughter has variations of the word that sounds like daughter, and she becomes Anders' daughter. Right? So then when Anders' son, his name is William, has a son, he becomes William's son, right? Whatever his first name and William's son. And so that's a patronymic pattern. And while it's confusing to see the surname change, or it's confusing to see siblings that are Anders' daughter and Anders' son, and you think that they're not in the same family, that's an example of patronymics, and you need to keep that patronymic naming tradition in your tree. Now, this is the one that has evolved for me the most. If you are in a culture where the children get a double surname, now this is common with my sister-in-law. She's from Monterrey, Mexico, and she received two surnames, her father's surname and her mother's surname. That is her surname, that double surname, and that needs to go into the surname field, both names. Now, when she married my Anglo brother, our tradition is just Geisler. So all of my nieces and nephews have the last name Geisler. They don't have her father's surname, so it doesn't come down that way. But if you are in a culture that has those double surnames, in the past, I was taught just to put the father's surname, but now that's standard, and having spoken with my sister-in-law, you really should keep track of those double surnames. So let's take a moment. How are things going on in the chat? What are they thinking?
Well, so here's I guess one thing of, I think we need to specify why some of these things were used before and why there's no reason to use them, and in some cases they're actually detrimental now.
Okay, so let me grab, I'm gonna try.
Ooh, whiteboard. Devin's doing the whiteboard.
Maybe. Okay.
You got to go and put your colors up there first.
I do. All right. I'm going to use red. All right. So let's say you had the name Robert Bob Brown. Okay. Now on a chart, a paper chart, we would write, sorry, you guys are twisted. I probably Andy's more linear and I'm like up in the, okay. Anyway, so we put it on a chart because almost always you're going to see Bob on the records in city directories and yearbooks, whatever.
When you say on the chart, what chart are we talking about?
So let's pretend this is a pedigree, a group sheet, and here's Bob, and here's his wife, and there's the kiddos, kiddo, and then you have a matching one where...
But what kind of chart is this?
Yes, this is a group sheet.
But what kind of what format is this group sheet in? There, paper. Sorry, it's on paper.
So on paper, it was a way to accent that this was the person's, nickname. And that was kind of obvious, but sometimes you would have...
You've got to go and turn on your thing again.
I do.
You click close instead of clear.
I did. So let's say you have Ralph Bubba Young. Well, a lot of people would put the parentheses so that you know that on his birth certificate and his marriage certificate, his Ralph, but in any other record you found of him, well, that was his name. Well, the problem, how do you do a computer? Here's my bet. Here's my computer. Let's pretend that's a computer.
Draw an apple and then everybody knows it's a computer.
Well, I was showing that was the Ancestry logo. See if I make that green, maybe you'll... They're Shaky Link website. So that's Ancestry, right? Well, if you put this into a search form on Ancestry, Ralph and Young, and you put these in here, you get an error. You get these errors because these marks, those marks right there, those are all part of coding language. And so you're going to start messing up the algorithm searching for these things if you use this. So we're going to talk about some places where you actually can put Bubba, because you need to keep track of Bubba, but you don't need these extra things in there. And then when you come to Clear, where's Clear? Right there?
Yep.
Okay. So when you have baby girl Brown, that's not indexed. So you're never going to find a record that says baby girl. And so we just kind of leave that off. And there's a female mark associated with the record, and that lets you know that she was a girl. And then you have a death date and a birth date. And so that way you know that she died in infancy. Or there's a tag where you can say died young. And that will help you also know that, okay, this was an unnamed baby girl. She died young, so on and so forth. She's female. And you don't need to use that anymore.
So a lot of these things are just basically because you've gone from paper records where we had limited space and it was only that.
Right.
And so you wanted to make sure you had all the information on there.
Yep.
To computer records where literally you have unlimited information. You have all these different fields, but there's also some programming behind it that's looking at that to be able to search for all these different things.
Right.
And some of our old techniques from doing it on paper mess up the programming. Now, the reason why I brought that up is because a couple of people have talked about Krista Cowan for Ancestry for unknown, I think it was for unknown names. She recommends putting 5 dashes. And I would say this. Now, this is the gospel according to Andy.
Genealogists are allowed to disagree because there really is no standard here. So this is his opinion.
This is my opinion. I would not do that, and here's why. It probably works for Ancestry, and Krista recommends it for Ancestry because she knows that whatever programming they have in the back end, it ignores those 5 dashes, which is fine. However, if you're going to do that on Family Search or MyHeritage or in Roots Magic or in Family Tree Maker or any other program, you don't know what that 5 dashes is going to do.
Right.
And so it may do nothing. It may mess up something.
But part of me, so I used to program databases for the DFW International Airport. And when you added in unnecessary data, you created more bloat in the system. So, and it's also an extra step, which reduces efficiency. So I respectfully disagree with adding the dashes because it's the same thing as a blank. It sorts the same thing as a blank. So why add extra characters in there? So we're going to give you some guidelines, and then you can decide what you want to do. So, all right. Now, here's
Is this the view you want?
I'm going to come back to this view right here. So the other reason why we do a lot of these, taking it out of the name field. So so here's the name field, Isaac Young. So if we have a place to put his title, we haven't gotten to that yet. First name, last name, suffix. Well, we can add notes right here in the reason statement. We can add alternative names. So if we need to add alternative names, which we're going to talk about here in a moment, we can add those in. There's also customized notes. We're going to be talking about that in a little bit. Maybe you need to make a note of when a name change took place so you can keep it there. So we have so many places where we can keep track of this information. We don't have to try to shove it into this name field and then throw off not only our tree reports, but also the ability to search the tree as well. So this is why some of these practices have gone by the wayside. So anything else?
Well, we've got tons of questions whenever you get, but some of the questions relate to some of the stuff you're going to go through. So.
Oh, okay. Sorry. My nose keeps itching. I think we need a nose icon for every time you guys see me itch my nose. Anyway, it doesn't happen normally. All right, so we should be tracking titles and suffixes. And it's really, really, really important that we keep titles and suffixes in the right field. So let's go back over here to show you here on Isaac, right? So if he was an esquire, that would go into the suffix field. If he was a JD, a Juris Doctorate, that could go in the suffix. If he is a Isaac Young III or Isaac Young, some other suffix like that, junior, senior, put those in the suffix field. If he is a captain, if he's a general, if he is a baron, you want to put those in the title field. And the reason why you want to do this is because if you followed my John Townley series, there was a gentleman, and his name was Major James Townley. Okay? Now, in another series, we talked about the possibility, General Underwood, and his middle name was Winfield, and he went by Winfield all the time. The question is this a title, or was that a given name? So, what do you guys think? Title or given name? Have you ever come across somebody who was actually given the name Major, Captain, General, Corporal, Sergeant for their first name and it wasn't a title? Duke is another one that comes to mind, especially in the South. We like to name people Duke.
Well, our former president had a son named Baron.
That's true. That's true. So Major for a first name, you guys have seen that. All right. So it's important to keep track of titles over here.
You can make your coloring thing and then you can color it.
So put your titles over here. But if the name is actually Major Colonel Sanders, Colonel Sanders, I think, was it really his first name or was Colonel going to go over here? I don't know my history. Duke has also been a surname. Exactly. So we need to be tracking things where they're supposed to go. And in my Townley series, his name was Major James Townley. And so that needed to go here.
Paula says Major is actually a common first name in Appalachia.
Oh. See, I love you guys. You guys teach me stuff so much all over the time. This guy was in New Jersey, so I don't know that that's Appalachia, but you want to keep track of those titles. You want to use the titles and suffixes correctly.
Now, Ancestry doesn't have a title field.
It doesn't. So what are you going to have to do? Well, let's go figure out what we can do. So let's go over to Benjamin. We're going to pick on Benjamin. We like Benjamin. Maybe we'll pick on him.
You got to click the profile there.
Nope, you just have to wait. So what can you do? You can add a custom event or fact, a custom event, and just type in their title. That's one way you can do it. You can also use a My Tree tag and do a custom, where's their custom relationship, create a custom tab, and then you can add a title there. So there's ways that you can hack when they don't give you that title field. Now, speaking of Ancestry, Ancestry says that you can put, let me get a little, and get a color, right? Yeah. You can put little hearts and a double helix. Okay, that's not really a double helix. You can put a ship, right? And you can put that all in your suffix field. Well, you can, and they're telling you to do that because
they don't look at the suffix field.
They don't look at the suffix field.
So the suffix field in Ancestry, you could literally use for everything.
Yeah, you can actually put your titles over there.
But as going back to my disagreement with Krista Cowan, that works for Ancestry. That doesn't necessarily work for all the other databases.
Right. So if you have Ancestry here, they don't have a title, but they have a suffix, and then you're trying to port it over to Family Search using Roots Magic, they do have a title field. They do have a suffix field. Well, Ancestry is going to dump everything over here, and then you're going to put it over here, and then it's going to be a big old mess.
Yeah.
Right? So I try to be consistent. You know? You try to be consistent as much as possible. But do find a way to keep track of your titles and your suffixes, because they are part of the names and they often point to other records. And let's talk about alternate names. I'm sure people had questions about alternate names. Now, name changes. Let's go back to Benjamin. We pick on Benjamin a lot. The reason we pick on Benjamin is because his father's name is James Garnett, but he is Benjamin Freeman Garnett, who changed his name to Lee, but I won't give you the backstory because it's part of Andy's presentation, right?
That's for members there, isn't it? That's on the members side.
The members do have the 40-year mystery, so you need to go watch that. If you don't have it, it's over in the DNA playlist for members only. But let's talk about name changes. Look at my color. Our standard, we're going to come back to it in a little bit, but our standard is you usually use the name given at birth. And we're going to actually talk about this later, so I'm going to actually table this discussion for a second.
I was wondering why you're getting to this one already.
Yeah, I know. I could hear your brain going over here. But you do want to track the changes, is the principle. The other thing you want to track, and this is from the community. I learned from Greg Clark, from his French-Canadian ancestors, that you guys have dit names. And I don't know if I said it right. Dit names? Anyway, these are names that are used when there's people with the same name. Correct me if I'm wrong, Greg. Oh, Andy, watch him. These are common in French-Canadian names where you have people with the same name.
Oui.
Huh?
Oui.
I said it right? Dit?
Yeah.
Dit name? All right. And you add an extra name to keep them separated. So in some places, senior and junior doesn't mean father and son. It just means the oldest Bob Smith in this location and the youngest Bob Smith in this location. But in the dit names, from what I understand, they add a different kind of name. And you put actually both of those in the surname field because they come up in records like that. And so you want to go ahead and put those in there because then it triggers the algorithms to look for both surnames. So that's why you want to do that. And nicknames. Keep track of nicknames because remember my example of Ralph Bubba Young? You could be banging your head against the wall trying to figure out what the real name of Ralph is if you don't keep track of Bubba. And then when Ralph disappears, but it really becomes Bubba because he's using his nickname more often than his first name, you want to keep track of those. So where are you going to put those is probably the next question. Well, Ancestry, do they have an alternate name field? Also known as?
Also known as.
So you can do an add a fact and put an also known as. And then, as I showed earlier on Family Search, you can do an alternative name. You can do this in your software program as well. So keep track of those name changes right there. Keep track of those. The French-Canadian names, you're actually going to put it up here. So if it was Young Brown, it's not really Canadian and French at all, but you could put both names up there, very similar to that double name traditions in some cultures. And then those nicknames could also go down there. Don't put the nicknames up here in this field. So if you have Penelope, Penny, Young, you can put Penelope up here, and then in the alternate, you can put Penny, or Margaret and Maggie, because there's some nicknames that don't seem to have anything to do with the first name, but it's very, very common. And if you're from that culture, you know it. But if you're not from that culture, you don't know it. So go ahead and keep track of those. Alrighty.
Peggy and Margaret there. That's a good one.
Peggy and Margaret. That could be an example of one. But there's some that's even
more oddball.
Yeah, we've talked about that. Okay, so now we're getting into the realm of personal preference, and we're gonna I promise we'll get away from names, but names is actually the question I get the most, so I wanted to make sure we kind of covered those. Now, when I was starting genealogy 30 years ago, I was told I had to capitalize all surnames, and I still like it that way. But again, talking to an audience member, they said when you have those diacritic marks or diacritic marks, sorry. Maybe I'm thinking of diabetes too much to my mother.
The diabetes marks. I don't think that's part of the English language.
I don't think so either. Sorry. So, but there's also DeWitt and DeVal. If you capitalize it, all looks capitalized all the time. But if you have a surname, let's go ahead and write the one. This is from my friends. All right. Now, some of you are going to say it differently. Some of you are going to say DeVal. But they always said DeVal's your pal, and so I know how to write it that way. So if you capitalize this, you're not going to know that this was actually a lowercase thing. So
no, you're not going to know that the V was a capital V.
The V was, oh, you're right. You're right. You're right. In my brain, it made sense. When I said it, it didn't.
Well, but also just looking at pronunciation for something like this, if it's all capitalized, is the I making an I sound or is the I making an I sound? Because you can see that if it's lowercase, then DI is a separate word from vowel.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm starting to think you can choose personal preference. And a lot of websites will let you force the surnames capital or have this form. So I have a DeVoe as a fifth grandmother, so I put it as DeVox. Oh, okay, I see what she says.
Oh, so you leave you capitalize everything except for that part there. Right,
but going back to the French Canadians, I'm just going to pretend I don't think this is accurate, but let's say that there's an accent mark. In some capital languages, or in capital letters in some languages, so it could look like this, and they might not have a letter that has that accent marked. And so when you force the capitalization, you actually mess up the name. So
how'd you get the blue marks on there?
I have no idea.
Refresh that page, see if they go away.
I messed up.
You did something.
I did something. I do stuff all the time. All of the time. So now we're going to talk a little bit about going to which names, and then we're going to talk about relationships. Okay? All right. So we're going to talk about name selection. Everybody in the chat who's a member, you need to get ready for that caution mark because
it all depends.
It all depends. And that is one of the things that can be frustrating in genealogy. It's sometimes the answer is it depends. So let's talk about some it depends. Typically, the standard is the name at birth is the name you put in the surname field or the tree field.
And some people are, some genealogists are adamant it is always the name at birth.
Right.
They're wrong.
They're probably not right. Let me go grab somebody really quickly. So I'm seeing some. Great. I love your it depends. Good job. I need to find somebody really quick over here on Family Search.
So we got some good names as far as those. O'Brien with the whatever. There was some with the capitalized where you have some that look similar. Where is this one? Legault would not have a Legault with a capital G. Same with LaPlante. Even though there might be some other names that start with LE or LA that have that capital. So just be aware of that as you're looking through.
All right.
We talked about the DeVoe.
Yes, we did.
Okay.
All right. So let's go back to typically name at birth. We're going to come back to her in a second, actually. Typically name at birth, but there's times when there are variations. So adopted ancestors. And that's why I needed to go pull up this person. So this is my grandmother, Louise Eleanor Long. So when it comes to adopted ancestor, it all depends. There, I said it. I'm an Andy. It depends. It depends on when they were adopted. So for my grandmother, she was born, and the day after that, her single mother died. And then she was adopted very quickly by Harry and Laura Maud. So, other than her birth certificate to her biological mother, she never appears as Louise Eleanor Long. And so, in that case, I would recommend, just my recommendation, I would recommend that you would go with that name, that her adopted name on her tree, and then include the alternate name here. And that is her biological name, but there's only one record that you're ever going to find with that name. Now, Andy and I have talked about, there's one document that has her full name in it, and we'll talk about that later, but her name, for all intents and purposes, is this. But what happens if they're adopted as a teenager? Well, then it's going to have to really depend on the family. What are your thoughts? If they're adopted older, do you use the birth name or do you use the
I look
name?
at it in this way: is the whole point I see is, hey, we're trying to find and link people together, which means we're trying to find records. So all of the programs will look at the name field whenever they're searching records. Not all of the databases and websites look at those, also known as whatevers. So I would put the name that I expect the most records to be under. So when you think about somebody's life in the United States, just for instance, there's usually a birth record, then there's usually a marriage record if they're married, then there's usually a death record, then there's going to be 2 to 10 census records depending on where they show up in the census. So when you think about that, by the time somebody's 20, if they have a different name by the time they're 20, the majority of their records are going to be in this new name. Now, there's still going to be some in this old name, but the majority of the records are in that. If somebody changes their name when they're 70 and they get one census or they just get the death record, there's 2 records there. And so there's all these other records that are going to be under that. So that's how I make my decision. Where do I think I'm going to find the most records? What name?
Right. Name changers. So this goes back to Benjamin Freeman Lee. Okay? Name changers. So he was born Benjamin Freeman Garnett, but after trying to run away from the law, he is Benjamin Freeman Lee. So why did you make this decision? Remember, this is an it depends category. So let's just listen to one reason and you guys can share what you would have done.
So this name change happened sometime between when he was 20 and 30. The exact timing, don't know. But it also happened at a time when there was few records in the early part of his life. And there's tons of records later in his life. And the fact that all of his family, as far as his descendants, only knew him as Benjamin Freeman Lee. None of them knew him. None of them knew that his last name started out as Garnett.
I see some people are doing Batman genealogy over there in the chat. You guys are silly. All right, so now we have a situation that you guys tell me what you think. All right, so we have Michael Bauer, okay? And Michael is descended from these 2 people, and their last name is Bauer. When he was 45 years old, he discovered that the Bauer was actually his aunt, and aunt had a sister.
A brother? A husband?
Nope, no sister.
Oh, okay.
Sisters, 2 sisters.
Oh, okay.
Married different brothers. And so at 45, he discovered he was really born Kirchner, right? But they died shortly after his birth. So he changed his name in records to Kirchner. But before this time, he had kiddos and he had a wife. Is that right?
Yep.
Circle is a wife. Okay? This one was born a Bauer and changed the name to Kirchner. This one stayed Bauer. This one changed, and this one changed Bauer. So the question is, what last name do we put for Michael? And the question is, kind of depends.
It's for you to decide in your family tree.
It's for us to decide. Now, for the most part, I decided to have both because
when you say both, what do you mean by both?
Actually, let me get another color, maybe. And it's a big old mess. Andy does whiteboard better than me, but that's all right. Andy's better than me. Kirchner first, because that's his biological name, right? This is his parent, right? They wanted to raise him, but they both got killed before he could be raised. And then I put the Bauer.
Put the Bauer both in the surname field?
I do. I put both of them in there because he actually has both. And the search engine searches for both, but the problem is he's got Bauer offsprings and he's got Kirchner offspring, and people keep trying to split him into two people, and one going to this family and one going to this family, when it's really the same person. So this is kind of my signal to other researchers. He's the same person, and then I really mark up that record, the notes in Family Search, to let people know, yeah, he's really the same man. I need a hustle, right?
Mm-hmm.
I need to go hustle. So, all right, some more tips. Anglicized names. So I saw some people say that they used the name that they used in America for their Swedish ancestors. And for me, I actually put my immigrant ancestor in the name that he came to America in. Because from that point on, everybody used the anglicized name. He didn't really live long enough to have a firm spelling. Plus, he also spelled that name so that his wife could join. He was Catholic, and he married a Lutheran, and he gave permission for her to participate in the Lutheran church. It was the practice of the day. And he spelled it with that SZ. I call it the German beta. Looks like a beta. So for him, I didn't actually anglicize his name. But for you, you may, as long as you keep both names, one in the primary field and one as an alternate name, just keep track of them. And then when it comes to yourself, you've got to decide, how do you want to appear on your family tree? So let's get to some situations here in a second. But the last thing you don't want to do...
Which is what you just did.
Well, not exactly. Not exactly. Right? He was always Michael. But I combined the two last names because he, as an adult, changed his name. So, I don't know. Don't combine the name. What I'm really trying to say is don't combine the names.
As you can see, it is, by the way, we're still on the whiteboard.
Oh. Sorry.
No, you just need to switch over to the tips.
Oh, here's the tips, but I was going to go to the whiteboard. Okay, so.
But now we're at ourselves. We're not at the tips.
This is why I like editing instead of live stream.
So in other words, don't combine names except when you do.
Except for when you do, like this one. So my grandmother's name is at birth was Marie Anderson. And then after she was adopted, it was Louise Long. You don't put both of those names in a record because almost always she's here. The reason I opted for Michael Bauer...
You don't have to justify it. It's okay.
I'm just explaining. Bauer Kirchner is because as an adult he shows up in both. See, Benjamin Freeman as an adult shows up at one, so it's interchangeable. And there have been times at his death anyway. It's confusing. All right. So, how do you record adopted living relatives? Well, it depends. What are you trying to do? So if you're trying to keep track of your distant cousins and their adoptions, then you can just keep them in the tree of their adopted family and write a note that they were connected. But this is when Family Search rocks. Because, so I can't actually go down to the family tree because there's living people there. Let me try to go back to somebody else. Here, let me switch off for a second. Let me just go find somebody real quick. Okay. So now we can switch back. So one of the great things about Family Search is you can stick all your relatives there. All of them. The problem with Ancestry is now your tree gets so big you don't want to deal with all the mess. You don't want to deal with all the hints. You don't want to deal with all the hints. You don't want to deal with all the DNA matches. And then it gets really big and bulky and really distracting. So the question is, how do you record adopted living relatives? The question then becomes is, do you record them? And I would say record them if they are a part of your, put them in your tree if they're an active part of your family circle. Otherwise, put them in Family Search. And then I guess the question is which name you use, and we've already kind of covered that.
What were you going to show down here on Family Search?
Oh, I was just saying that, so she's adopted, right? So let's say this was your third cousin 4 times removed.
Why don't you go to Marguerite Joan Long?
Well, she has living people.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. So both of these children were actually adopted, right?
So they show up with 2 sets of parents is what you were going to try to show.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Probably. But I was just saying, do you record them? But I guess I see what you're saying. Yes, go ahead and stick both sets of parents in there in Family Search. But if you're on Ancestry, you don't have to keep track of all the parents if you don't want them. All right, so the next one is, how do you record if I'm adopted by a stepfather? Well, it depends. It depends on when you were adopted by that stepfather. It depends on what you want to have printed on your family tree. And it depends on how your family knows you. You are alive, and so you get to make that decision. If you're dealing with a deceased ancestor, just use some of the principles we were kind of talking about before and make the best decision. Now, the problem comes on Family Search when people keep changing names back and forth. Well, it's going to be a battle of the last one standing. Or you can send messages to each other and see if you guys can come to an agreement of why do I have Bauer Kirchner rather than Bauer or Kirchner if the standard is the name at birth. So now, how do you record twins in a tree? So now we're switching and talking about relationships. Do you have any more questions about names? We'll see if we have any time for it. I'm just sharing lots of stuff. Okay, so twins in a tree, do's. Use Ancestry My Tree tags. So if Benjamin was a twin, in the past, people would put twin as a middle name, twin as a nickname, twin in these name fields, twin in the suffix field. Yes, you can use the suffix field, but you can create a tree tag. So create a custom tree tag, type twin, and go for it. He doesn't want me messing up his trees, and he wasn't a twin, so I won't add it. But that's where you can actually add a twin. You can also add a custom fact. You can create a custom fact and note that they were a twin, and then there is a place to add a note somewhere, and view notes. You can put it here. You can do the same thing over on Family Search.
So somebody just pointed out, though, with that, is that the comments are public. Everybody can see the comments. The notes are private.
Oh, that's true. So good point. Put it in the comments. There you go. You can put it in the comments.
That's just on Ancestry.
That's on Ancestry. But on Family Search, they can see every comment that you made, every changes. You can go over to the Collaborate tab and write a note and say they were a twin. You can also use the Life Sketch field. Harry was the twin of Barry. Harry and Barry were twins. Right? But you're not going to put twin in his name, because when did you ever call Harry Twin Harry? I mean, anyway. All right. Maybe somebody snarky is going to tell me when they did, but anyway. So I just covered leave a note or create a custom fax. The things you don't do is don't put twin in the middle name and don't put it in the nickname. Now, here's your question. Should you include in-laws in your tree? Yes or no? Or it depends?
Well, it always depends.
It always depends?
It always depends.
It always depends.
There's an exception to everything.
Okay, so tell me about in-laws. Should we include them or not?
If you don't want to, you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it's your tree that you're making.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for the collaborative trees like WikiTree and Family Search, yeah, they're going to be in there, whether you put them in there or somebody else puts them in there.
Yep. So, Gertrude Long, she has a spouse who is Edward T. Ring. Well, and Edward also has 2 wives. So, in Family Search, put them all in there. But if in Ancestry, if those in-laws are not part of your research question, then I would say don't put them in there. No in-laws in my tree. But also remember where your tree is. So in-laws in your tree. Should you put your cousins in your tree?
Same thing.
Okay. So I keep track of my living cousins in Roots Magic. I keep track of their facts there. I don't put them in the tree, the public trees, even though they're privatized, because I just don't want to be responsible for their information getting out there. I'm not too terribly worried about it, but it's just one of those things that helps me sleep better at night. So I keep them in my genealogy software, and then when they pass away, then I'll go ahead and upload them to the tree. For distant cousins, it all depends on the questions you're trying to ask. So if you're doing a DNA tree and you know nothing about anybody, then put everybody and their dog in there that's biologically related to you. If you're doing a research tree and you're really trying to be hyper-focused, like I am on the Townleys, on Ancestry, I only put distant cousins who are going to be helping me work on that line. I don't worry about my clay balls. I don't put in those distant cousins. Other thoughts. Should you include your step family in your tree? Okay, so this comes back to the same part where people can, so here's a step family, right? Geraldine, this is her father, this is her mother, this is her stepmother, although she didn't actually get to know her stepmother. Long story. I would say if the step family is part of your inner circle and you want to track that tree, keep it, go for it. If in this case, I'm not going to mark Nancy, so I can actually put Geraldine down here as a child and put the step relationship. But he and her mother divorced and went separate ways, and she didn't have contact with Edward and her stepmother. So I'm not actually going to put that label. I could, but I'm not necessarily going to. So it kind of depends. So include adopted family in your tree. I had somebody email me this. She's like, would it be wrong to put my biological family in my family tree? Or ethically, should I have both in your tree? And I say yes. Have everybody in your tree. The thing you want to do is use relationship markers. We can go back to Louise, right? You notice right here, it says adopted. So in Ancestry and in Family Search and in Roots Magic, I can mark her as adopted. And then if I go over to her biological tree, it'll also say biological. I do want to point out one other thing. All right. So this is Delbert, the father of my grandmother. The one thing we don't have is we don't have something that says never married. So for now, the only thing I can do to yell at people that Delbert and Agnes were never married when they gave birth to Louise is to put it in the date field. And until Family Search can change this, that's the best solution I have. Because I want to yell at people. They weren't married. Don't look for a marriage record. It was not a marriage. I mean, this covers the basis of rape. It covers out of wedlock marriages, illegitimate marriages, all those type of relationships. That's the only thing I can say you can do right now. So
Ancestry has a tag for never married.
Oh, they do. They do have a tree tag. That's right, which is nice. I wish Family Search would get on board with that. That's out of the custom tags. Cancel. Relationship. Never married. Perfect. You see, so every platform has their strengths and weaknesses, but adding never married would be, we don't care why they were never married. You just need to be able to point out that they were never married, because we do have these kinds of relationships that we need to be honest about and tell other research, don't look for a marriage record because they weren't married. But it is a biological relationship, and we want to track that in our trees. So we have time for some questions that people dropped in. How many did I cover?
Well, you covered a lot of them, so we'll see as we go through real quick.
Okay.
But this is lightning round, so you can't.
This lightning round.
You can't be going off for 5 minutes on a question.
Okay. I know the first one was about two brothers.
Yes, this is Tara's question. How to mark brothers as brothers on a tree without adding their parents also? They are married to my great something aunts and aren't bio-related to me, so I don't want to add extra people.
Okay. Help me draw this so I can do lightning round. So the brothers have parents, right?
Yep.
And then somehow they're married to this chick.
No. No.
Okay.
You have two brothers here.
Uh-huh.
And they have their parents.
Uh-huh.
And they are married to great aunts who, I'm just going to say that these two great aunts are related or they're just part of Tara's family here.
Okay.
So, Tara doesn't want to have to put these people in up top.
Okay.
But she wants to note that these two people are brothers.
Yes. So there's two ways. One is Andy's way, and kind of my way. Just pick one of the parents and just put the surname. And create the link and don't put any other facts.
Okay, those aunts are sisters.
The
so
aunts are
sisters married brothers.
Sisters married brothers, but you don't want to track them. Fine. So one thing is just put kind of what I call a placeholder person, because I'm assuming you're not using Family Search. Because in a Family Search, connect them and it's not a problem, right? But if you're using Ancestry or software program, you don't necessarily want to keep track of all of their details. I can respect that. So one thing you can do is just put a placeholder person so you can show that they are related in your tree. The other thing you can do is you can do the My Tree tags if you're using Ancestry, and you can do a custom note if you're using software, and that's about all you're going to be able to do. So Andy highly recommends doing this, and I would too. Just put a surname. You're just putting a surname to help you see that they're related, and then just don't put anything else in there. Or you can add a note or a tree tag.
All right. John asks, when recording birth and death locations on Ancestry, which is best, putting commas in after each word or leaving the commas out? You closed out Ancestry.
I did close out Ancestry. Let me find out. Do what Ancestry tells you to do. Let's go get. Let's see. Commas. Because they're forcing the commas for you anyway.
Okay.
So add commas.
So next question that's sort of semi-related to it, and I can't remember where it is on this list, but actually right there. I'll look at that. Chris, Georgia the state or Georgia the country?
What about it?
When you're putting it, do you need a denote?
That is a very good question. So we have lots of places. Okay. Get the mark. What's really great, not so much here, but over on Family Search, if you type Georgia, it will give you this little drop-down list, and one of them is going to be country, and the other one's going to be state. And so that's going to help you a lot. Rich Magic 7 has standard naming places where you can also select a geocode, and that can help you. 8 doesn't have it yet, but it will eventually have it. It's got to get launched, and then they'll stick it in there. But let's say you have Nevada. And for people from Missouri, there's also a Nevada, right? So you need to put a country there and then put something in front of it. But if it's Nevada, Missouri, you need to put that too. So that'll help you out. As far as a country go, and you're over here on Ancestry, it doesn't really give you a choice, right? What you're going to have to do is just put Georgia and then somewhere put a note that you mean the country.
Okay. So how do you find a list of people? This is from John also. How do you find a list of people in your tree with quotation marks in their names so that you can change them?
That is Roots Magic. Okay. So I can't pull Roots Magic up, but there is a way to do a find per person. And then I'm going to write it out, though. I'm going to write it out. So what you do is there's going to be a find, right? And then what you're looking for is name, and they'll give you like surname, given name, right? And then you're looking for, this one will say contains, and then the next box, the next box on Roots Magic, you can put that, right? So what I can't really show you their screen, but up in their menu bar, there's a find, and then you go through name, contains, quotation marks, and that'll help you out.
All right. So next question. I like these. Do you put, and this is on the same vein because it just came in from Kathy. Do you put Rochester, Monroe, New York, USA, or Rochester, Monroe County, New York, United States of America, or I would even add state of New York, United States of America? And this is funny because this is one where genealogists are all wrong here because there is no right answer. Because whatever you say, you're going to violate it. Because if you say it has to be the name of the place at the time, well, what Kathy's really asking is do you use the colloquial name or do you use the official name?
Okay. Let's settle the first thing first. And then the question mark is county here. First of all, can we not do this anymore? No more abbreviations. Because what if that's Franklinton or something else? I can't spell. And could be a lot of things. It could be College Station, for crying out loud, right? So let's not do abbreviations. Let's try to spell things out. I'm going to come back to a minute as much as possible. The problem is they're not consistent. Sorry, I'm not going to spell it out because I'm trying to go fast. They use United States. They use USA, and no one does.
No one adds the of America.
Of America, because instead of, I can't even, I used to be able to say it, but it's the United States of Mexico.
It is. And that's why I say whatever any genealogists tell you is the rule, they're wrong because they violate it. Because if you're saying we need to use the official name, well, the official name of the United States of America is the United States of America. The official name of New York is the state of New York. The official name of Rhode Island is the state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations or something like that. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's this big, huge, long thing.
Okay, great. You got to help me out. Make sure I got this right.
So,
however,
okay.
However, I think it's vitally important that you change the name as history changes the name. I don't know this accurate, but Poland has had many different countries. And you want to have, what was it at the time that your ancestor had that event take place in Poland? For Canada, because my ancestor's from here, I can speak more to this. Did I get it right, Greg? For Canada, yeah, I got it right. Okay, because Lower Canada is, we're not going to talk about that. We talked about it in another lecture. But when they were Upper Canada, my ancestors did these things. I used Upper Canada. When it became Canada West, I used Canada West because the geography is changing.
No,
and
the geography stayed the same.
The geopolitical designation is changing. And what it does is on my timeline, when I'm writing about my ancestors, then I can also include historical context. So when you know where the records are, particularly in places like Poland. Or
Germany, for that matter.
Or Germany.
Because there's lots of the people that have Germany in the 1850s, and it's mm-hmm. something from Germany. Mm-hmm. Germany didn't exist in 1850. Mm-hmm. Germany didn't exist until 1871. There were German duchies and German empires, namely meaning the people spoke that. But there was Baden and Saxony and Hanover and Prussia and all this other things. There was no Germany.
So we don't, even though a lot of websites will try to force you into Baden, Germany, when my ancestor was born, I don't include the Germany.
Yeah.
He was born in Baden.
So the right answer, which is still the wrong answer, is include as much as you can for that area that makes sense without going crazy. So if you don't want to write United States of America, just write United States. It's okay. Yeah. But yeah, it depends.
But the one thing I do want you to do is spell things out as much as possible. Just so we know the difference between Colleyville, Collard Station, Columbus, whatever. You don't want to use abbreviations like that. I mean, standard abbreviation for United States is actually US or USA, so. Yeah.
So there was somebody that had, they actually mentioned that they actually have an ancestor that has 3 birth certificates. Uh-huh. Because the mom filled out one with one name.
Yep.
The dad filled out one with another name.
Yep.
And the nurse lost both of them and filled out a third one with all 3 names.
Yep.
Or with something else completely.
Yep. And the question is, what do you do?
Which one do you use? Use all of them. Sorry, we're running out of time. So
okay.
Linda's got a quick question. Just curious, what whiteboard program are you using?
What whiteboard program? It's called, I'll write it so you can, it's called blank.org.
No, that's just a website. That's just a website that is blank. The whiteboards thing is a Google Chrome called
Page Marker.
Page Marker.
Mm-hmm. Well, whatever questions we didn't tackle today, we will tackle in a future episode. So make sure you keep those questions coming in. There's just so much to cover. I really thought I thought this was going to take 20 minutes tops. And now it's an hour and 10 minutes. So thanks so much for everybody. Okay, sorry. Yay. Thanks so much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed our time together. If you are an FHF channel member, make sure that you are either on the email list or can find the community tab on Facebook. You will get a notification when I release the untangling your branches in your family tree and keeping them separated, particularly when you're using Family Search. I know everybody's favorite platform to love to hate, but I hate to love. I don't know. I like Family Search. Huh?
That made no sense.
Well, there's a lot of people who don't like Family Search.
No, but you said you hate to love.
You know, I know. That doesn't make any sense. Whatever.
And we're getting happy Valentines from
Aww.
Maria and Kathy.
Love you guys all. Thank you so much. Again, make sure you get in that email or check in the community tab. It will go live sometime tomorrow, hopefully around 11 if all goes well. 11 my time in Mountain, so 2 p.m. Is that right? No, that's not right.
11 Mountain, 2 p.m.
Why am I saying 11? Noon Mountain, 2 o'clock Eastern.
Oh, we've changed it to that now? Okay.
Everything goes live to noon.
Is it noon? Our time? Okay.
Noon, our time.
I don't know what time it is.
And I'm so glad you guys are using all of the emojis. I'm glad you like them. Those were pretty fun to make for you. So anyway.
We'll see y'all later.